So this is probably gonna be a pretty negative video, which I don't tend to do, but Gotham Knights is just so disappointing in so many different areas that I felt the need to talk about it, so that's what we're gonna do today. Let's get into it. The last game WB Montreal put out was Batman Arkham Origins from 10 years ago. So yes, that means Gotham Knights has had probably close to a 10-year development cycle. Apparently, WB Montreal was working on a Suicide Squad game that ended up getting canceled early on, so yeah, Gotham Knights is what they've been working on for the past, I want to say 7 years, and that's kind of hard to believe considering so many things. Starting off, let's talk about the detective elements, which is one area where Batman Arkham Origins really thrived. It was one of the best elements of that game. You're fast forwarding time, reversing time, you're doing all sorts of things to figure out what had happened in an area. Unfortunately, Gotham Knights doesn't really have anything like that. In Gotham Knights, the only time you feel like a true detective is when you're analyzing something in the environment or literally connecting the dots. And I mean that 100% literal. You're looking at a board and connecting dots, trying to figure out what connects and what doesn't. And usually there's not a whole lot of options to choose from with whatever you're looking at, so you don't even have to really read or pay attention. You can simply just drag something to something else and you're gonna probably get it right because it's not like a hard puzzle or anything. And that's the only time you somewhat feel like a detective in Gotham Knights, which I think is a shame because I would have preferred if WB Montreal built on top of what they did previously with Arkham Origins and just made it even better. But honestly, Gotham Knights, in terms of gameplay continuity between Arkham Origins and this new game, it's very minimal. Like, they feel different, they play different, and they're just different all around, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I feel like they really had something special, specifically with the detective stuff in Arkham Origins, and it's a shame that they just completely moved away from that. But that's not the only element of this game that I feel like is really lacking. Gotham Knights is also an RPG, and you'll rarely even notice, because I barely even had to pay attention to the RPG elements of Gotham Knights. I would go to my desk, upgrade my suit, and walk away. I was never in the menus like a real RPG, like a Witcher style RPG, going through the menus, trying to figure out what's the best thing to wear, what can I mix with what to make my character at the peak of their performance. It was never like that in Gotham Knights, because you don't really have to do it. The game doesn't force you to. I suppose you could, but it wouldn't really change the outcome of the gameplay or anything like that. Which begs the question as to why it's even an RPG. I feel like it's totally unnecessary, and they could have just made it a normal action game like the Arkham trilogy, and that's one thing you're probably going to hear me say a lot in this video. They probably should have just done what they did before instead of trying something new, but worse. But speaking of going to the desk and getting your upgrades, one thing I did enjoy was all the different suits. It's a lot of fun unlocking new suits, crafting new suits, and then changing their colors, changing your cowl. All that's really awesome. And the detail on those suits is really impressive as well. Down to the fiber, you can zoom in and be like, damn, that looks good. Unfortunately, the character models do not match the quality of the suits. One thing I noticed in this game was that the characters just look really outdated in terms of the actual textures of their faces, their eyes, their mouths, and the animations of all said things. Like, nothing looks like a brand new 2022 game when it comes to the character models. I actually made a TikTok about this, just sort of poking fun at the fact that the animations in the face and stuff still don't look as good as like a late PS3 game, and that TikTok blew up because, I mean, it's true. The game just doesn't look that good in that department. But I will say, I think graphically, it's not as bad as everyone is acting like. I think it looks pretty good most of the time. And I took some really awesome photo mode pictures. I'll show some of them right now. That is one positive thing about the game, is the photo mode. I'm still having a lot of fun with it. But yeah, the graphics, do they look like modern 2022 visuals? No, not really, especially when you think about the development cycle of this game being so long. However, they're not abysmal, you know, it's passable most of the time. And obviously, that's just my opinion. When I was looking at this game's graphics, I never thought, ooh, this could look so much better. I was just, you know, it looked decent most of the time. There are some linear sections that you'll go through, like Blackgate Prison and like underground in like a sewer, and I was really impressed by the visuals, the lighting, the rocks falling down. It was all really nice. But those character models, my God. Terrible. Speaking of the characters, in Gotham Knights you can play as one of 4 people: Batgirl, Nightwing, Robin, or Red Hood. But unfortunately, I feel like it really affects the story overall because you're playing as one character and they go through all these cutscenes talking to different characters and different story beats and whatnot, but your Batgirl has to be able to be substituted with Robin, so none of the cutscenes can be really all that in-depth. And I'm sure there are scenarios where whoever you're talking to would say a different line to a different character, but all in all, the dialogue just felt really bland and as basic as it could possibly be, so it would make sense with all 4 characters. And that's really unfortunate because Batman and Gotham is all about the characters. That's where Gotham and Batman in general shines the most, is the huge variety of enemies and characters, and Gotham Knights just doesn't really shine in this area simply because of the way the game is structured, being able to play as 4 different characters. And I gotta say, one of the biggest negatives about this game for me is that the voice acting usually isn't good. I feel like the direction the voice actors were given was probably pretty damn bad because there are serious scenarios happening. This is a minor spoilers moment, but I just feel like it's necessary to bring it up. I'm playing as Batgirl. She falls down into like a hole that's in like a sewer or something, and she falls onto hundreds of skeletons, dead people from the 1800s till now. And her reaction is like, oh, poor people. It's like, what? That's what you told the actress to do, was say something so bland and non-reactive to something so serious? You fell on top of dead bodies, and your reaction was just so bland and just no emotion whatsoever. And I feel like I don't really want to blame the actors on this because they probably did most of it in a booth and weren't given that good of direction, because you can tell that every character is not really talking to each other. There's no way they recorded their dialogue at the same time, which I think is rare, but still, I feel it more than ever in Gotham Knights. And the way they're reacting to certain situations, just to me, sounds like the actor was given no context at all. There's even one section where you're basically going through like this, like a Wipeout style course, where there's blades spinning, there's flames shooting up, and you gotta dodge it all. And then there's one guy who hit the ground right before that, and like as you're going like through this thing, Batgirl's like, ah, that poor man. It's like, Batgirl, you should be more angry, or you should have some type of emotion instead of just saying, "Aw, man, shucks, golly gee." That's what I keep hearing in this game, basically, is not that dialogue specifically, but along those lines. And obviously, that's the writers as well. I'm not gonna blame it all on the actor. It's about the writers, the direction. Everything is just so chaotic and weird when it comes to the voice acting in this game. And also keep in mind, I'm playing as Batgirl specifically, but my buddy who's playing as Red Hood said it's the exact same. He actually said that to me before I even told him about how I felt about it, so I was like, oh my god. So yeah, the direction is just all over the place. Another negative thing to jump into is the stealth of Gotham Knights, and it's just all over the place. In the Arkham games, there was always certain elements that were at play where you knew what to expect. If you were up on top of a beam and there was people below you, you simply would never get seen unless you like shot someone or like you were hanging around for too long, or like you were hanging like literally and they see you go back up. But in Gotham Knights, you can be up on a beam looking over, like trying to figure out what your game plan is, and then some dude's just like, hey look, it's Batgirl. I'm like, what? Are there no rules to the stealth here? Like, I don't understand if there's a darkness rule, if you can be in the dark and they can't see you. I don't understand if there's like a height rule. There are no rules to the stealth, and it basically feels impossible most of the time. If you're sneaking around like silently taking people out, there's almost like a 80% chance you're gonna get caught no matter what scenario you're in. It doesn't feel like it's because the game's stealth is challenging. It feels like the game's stealth is just kind of broken. Now this next one's a pretty big one as well, because I feel like traversal is really important in Batman games. And unfortunately, Gotham Knights Traversal doesn't feel as satisfying or good as the Arkham games, which is kind of crazy. Once again, I'm playing as Batgirl, so she's the most similar to Batman, but her gliding is way slower. It doesn't feel as mechanically strong as Batman's did, and it seems like the game just chooses when you're allowed to glide or not. Like if I'm indoors, sometimes it lets me glide, but most of the time it doesn't let me glide at all. I'll just be indoors taking people out. I want to jump off of a thing and glide down onto a guy. That's not a thing when you're indoors. Apparently, it's impossible to glide whenever you're fighting enemies inside of like a museum or something. So that's really weird. But even on top of that, out in the open world, Batgirl's gliding doesn't feel as good as Batman's. Her grappling hook doesn't feel as good. Nothing feels as good. The bike, I do like that you can get it to spawn right in front of you instead of waiting for the Batmobile to come in, and it does like the special animation in Arkham Knight. It's really convenient in Gotham Knights to have it spawn right in front of you, as if it was there the whole time. But that being said, the bike's just not as fun as the Batmobile. And this is coming from someone who didn't really like the Batmobile, but I jumped into Arkham Knight just to see how it felt, and I gotta say, the Batmobile feels very satisfying. Going through Arkham City, just destroying houses and stuff, like you can destroy so much with the Batmobile. Whereas with the bike in Gotham Knights, you feel very weak. You can't go through a car, you can't barely hit anything. The game typically just automatically gets you out of the way whenever you're about to hit something, which I found kind of interesting. So basically, the traversal in the city just doesn't feel as good as any of the previous Arkham games, which I just feel like is such a damn shame, because these are 4 different characters, and based on what I've seen, Batgirl's gliding is the coolest of them all. Like, Red Hood's got this weird teleporting thing, Nightwing glides on like an electric glider thing. That just doesn't feel as fun to me as having the momentum and gliding around, and it's still not as good as the Arkham games. Anyway, the performance I talked about a little bit. The game runs at 30 frames per second, and I'll be honest, it doesn't really bother me that much because I'm really used to it. I play a ton of Switch, I play a ton of PS3 and 360 generation games, and I'm very used to 30 frames per second. However, the performance just isn't really that great even at 30 frames. Out in the open world, anytime you're on the bike, the frames are dropping below 30, like guaranteed, which also is just like, what is up with this game? It's not even at 60. This is a game you would expect to be at 60 frames per second on modern hardware, and it's only at 30 and still having those problems. I'm not much of a performance guy, but I found it still pretty damn disappointing. I'm sure I could go on with all the negative things about this game, but I'll end it here. The video has been pretty long, and I think I got to most of the topics I wanted to. All in all, I really wish they just would have made another Arkham-style game. I feel like they didn't need to change the combat. I didn't even talk about the combat. The frickin' combat just doesn't feel as good as the Arkham games. Like, nothing feels as good as the Arkham games. The combat, the traversal, the writing's not as good, the acting isn't as good. In many ways, the graphics aren't as good, and that's just so disappointing. This is a game that has at least been in development, I want to say, for 5 years. At least. Because their last game was 10 years ago. And like I said, they might have been working on a Suicide Squad game that got canceled. That was the rumor, but still. 5 years, and this is what they make. And from a studio that made Arkham Origins. I like Arkham Origins more than Arkham Knight. I love that game. There are so many great elements. The actual story is really good. The main story of Arkham Origins, it's like one of my favorite Batman stories. And then this is just like, what is the story? The Court of Owls stuff is really cool, but it's really serious and dark. And then you have all these characters that are just acting like, hey, this is, oh golly gee, this is pretty crazy.
Freeze. Freeze can make weather now?
Freeze can make weather now.
The tone of the game is all over the place because you're in these very serious settings, and then Batgirl's acting just sounds so uplifting and happy. And it's like, why are you happy? Batman's dead. You don't know who the Court of Owls are. You just found hundreds of dead bodies. You saw a guy get murdered, and you're just perfectly fine. Like, no emotion in the voice at all, and that's disappointing. Yeah, this has been my Gotham Knights impressions, why I think, like, stuff I think's wrong with Gotham Knights. I'm gonna name this video everything that's wrong with Gotham Knights. That's a good one. So if you made it this far, thanks a lot for hanging out. This is Destructoid, and if you want to see more videos like this, let me know. I want to start making more content like this on this channel. We do a lot of stuff over on TikTok and now on Facebook and all that stuff, but the YouTube channel has been sort of a ghostland for a while, or a wasteland, a ghostland. Does that make sense? Anyway, I'll see you guys next time. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up. If you didn't, hit that thumbs down. I'll talk to you guys later. See ya.